There's reality and there's fantasy. In a world of fantasy, anybody can desire what they want: love, money, fame, children, beauty. But in the world of reality, things are quite different, even harsher. Fantasy can make you wish for something dreamy and almost out of reach, but one must know when to draw the line between that and what is standing right in front of you. Once a person is able to differentiate between the two, he or she can make better choices when faced with a dilemma. One of them can be tempting, but the other one, as unpalatable as it might seem sometimes, is the only true option that we have. When Ehi's younger sister got married, she had smiled through the wedding and acted like everything was fine. But deep down, it wasn't truly. As the first daughter of five girls, it is expected that she would be the first to get married. But Ehi had been through so many failed relationships since she turned 18 and started to have boyfriends. It was as though the universe carefully selected all the horrible men for her to date. During her younger sister's wedding, Ehe had been made to serve the guests who came, which was humiliating enough for her. Or maybe she wouldn't have felt that way if she did it with a wedding ring on her finger. "Don't worry, your own husband will come," many of the guests had said to her. They thought that they were being polite, but each time they said those words, Ehi felt her heart breaking all over again. She could even feel the pitiful stares from the other guests and knew exactly what they were thinking in their minds. Gosh, Ehi wanted the ground to open up and swallow her all through the wedding. And then, when it was finally over, she told herself that she would need to put in more effort into having a relationship that would lead to marriage. One bout of humiliation was enough, but the more he tried, guess what? The worse things became. The men she met were trash. All of them. He almost lost her mind when her second younger sister came home with her fiance. Where were they finding these men? Her sister was only 24 years old, but there was Ehi, who was almost clocking 30, and she couldn't get a man to successfully date her for more than 2 months. If only Ehi could find a way to avoid the wedding of her second younger sister. My dear, you need to be prayerful and always remember to tap from your sister's blessings. That way, your husband will locate you before you know it, those busybody aunties told her. Ehi forced a smile and said, okay, because what else could she have said? By the time her third younger sister brought home a man, Ehi was convinced that there were forces working against her finding a husband. By that time, she had already crossed 30 and she wasn't getting better in the dating pool. Instead, it became worse. Most of the men she met always said that they wanted younger women in their 20s. But when Ehi was in her 20s, she didn't see any of them to make a commitment to her. During her third sister's wedding, the words from those aunties had changed. Ha! You still haven't found a man? This one is not ordinary. Maybe you should work on your character. Men don't like women who have terrible attitude, they had told her. He had simply tightened her jaw and walked away. But the words stung, and that night she had soaked her pillows with tears. What exactly was wrong with her? She was beautiful, educated, and contrary to what those women who knew nothing about her had to say, he was well behaved. So why was everyone around her getting married and yet she always missed the blessing? When he clocked 20, she had envisioned that at 25, she would be married to her Prince Charming and they would live happily ever after. But here she was, approaching 35, and there was not a prince in sight. It escalated when her last younger sister got married. He must be cursed for her to be this old and not married, whereas all her sisters have found a husband. A lot of people had said behind Ehi's back, but somehow she had overheard it. Her parents became worried and Ehi couldn't blame them. No parents wanted to have an unmarried 40 years old daughter living under their roof, and from the look of things, it felt like Ehi was determined to make them experience it. They began to put Ehi through rigorous hours of prayers and fasting. And when they weren't doing that, they were dragging Ehi to one prayer house or another. Outside of her family, it wasn't any better. Year after year, Ehi suffered untold ridicule and unsolicited advices from neighbors, friends, extended family members, and even nosy acquaintances. Some of her married friends even cut her off because she was unmarried. When her sisters came home with their children and husbands during the holidays, he would suffer the pain of her predicament over and over again. Yet, she couldn't get anyone to love her enough to commit to her. The more she aged, the harder it became. Sometimes, he would go the full year without a single toaster, as most of them now concentrated on younger women. By the time he clocked 36, she knew that she couldn't go on like this. She was frustrated to the very last, and desperation couldn't even begin to describe how she felt. So, when Odia, the man who had been showing interest in her for years, came by again, he looked at him and told him that she would marry him, even though she knew that she didn't feel anything for him at all. Please like, please drop a comment and subscribe for more interesting stories. He told herself that waiting for Spec was a waste of time. She had gone past that stage now. Her parents were overjoyed when he eventually married Odia. Odia was in his mid 40s and an average man, but at the point where he was, her parents would give her to even an animal if he proposed to her. While he preferred her men tall, handsome, and stylish, Odia was the exact opposite. But there comes a time in a woman's life when her preferences would not matter anymore. That was exactly where reality overrode fantasy. Odia treated Ehi like she was the best gift to humanity. He worshipped the ground she walked on, did everything for her, and showed her love like she had never seen before. Odia wasn't wealthy, but he was hardworking, and he ensured that he provided everything that he wanted. He was willing to climb the highest mountains for her and cross the deepest seas. If he told Odia that she wanted him to jump into a burning fire, Odia would do so without asking questions. That was how much he loved her and wanted to please her. It didn't matter to Odia that Ehi wasn't in love with him. Unfortunately, none of what Odia was doing for Ehi could make up for the fact that she wasn't attracted to him. Maybe Ehi could have tried to love him, but she married him because she was bitter and frustrated, and so she didn't feel like it. Instead, she allowed Odia to do all the loving. Love and marriage are not the same thing, Ehi. Any woman with brains knows that it is better to end up with a man who loves you more than you love him than the other way round. You should be lucky that you found a man that covered your shame. Those were the words of Ehi's mother on the night of her wedding, and that was the only reason Ehi managed to spend each day in Odia's house as his wife. The only time she acknowledged him was when she had to show off to her friends who had cut her off because she was unmarried. Ehi, just like them, wanted to prove that she had a husband too. It continued that way for 3 years. People often said that a man's love usually dwindled or disappeared after the first few months or the first year, but not with Odia. 3 years later, he was still doing everything remotely possible for Ehi to be satisfied and comfortable. He even treated her way better than her sister's husbands treated them. But she never acknowledged that. While other men would have made a fuss that he hadn't gotten pregnant, Odia never complained or asked questions. At least, her sisters got to marry the men they really wanted to end up with. Not Ehi, who was stuck with a man that she had to tolerate his presence every passing day. When Odia went to work, Ehi would be happy because she didn't have to see his face. But when he was at home, she would focus her attention on either the TV or her phone. Just anything to avoid spending her precious time with him. Then once, when one of Ehi's married friends eventually invited her and Odia for their child's birthday, she was forced to go with Odia. After the birthday party, her friend called her aside and told her how lucky she was to have a man like Odia. And he didn't understand why her friend would say that. Her friend said that she couldn't explain it, but men like Odia were rare to find. Hold him tight though, she told Ehi. Even Ehi's parents commented Odia all the time, but none of that mattered to Ehi. They weren't the ones who were stuck with a man they didn't love or find attractive, so they wouldn't understand. Anyway, no matter what Ehi felt, she didn't have a choice but to remain in the marriage with him. If she leaves, she will face more ridicule and her parents would conclude that she was cursed. Not only did Odia take good care of Ehi, he also stood up for her in the presence of her family. Whenever they raised their ugly heads and tried to make trouble with Ehi for not getting pregnant, Odia would stand up for her. At some point, they had to also begin to respect Ehi. One day, Ehi asked Odia if he didn't want to have a child, seeing that he didn't seem bothered. And Odia told her that not that he never envisioned of being a father, but he loved Ehi way too much to pressure her into anything. And besides, it was God who gave children, so whenever God deemed it fit to bless them, he would. And he then asked Odia what he would do if he found out that she couldn't get pregnant because of her age or past mistakes. And Odia said that he wouldn't mind going for adoption as long as it was suitable for Ehi as well. He would never make decisions that would affect Ehi or enforce her into something that she didn't want. Those words would have melted the heart of any woman. but certainly not Ehi. In fact, she merely asked the questions just so that she could get a reason to rile Odia up or hate him more, but he didn't fall into her trap. For the last 3 years that they had been married, not once had Odia gotten upset with her, raised his voice at her, or treated her poorly. Wasn't that what every woman out there prayed for? Anyway, on one of the days that Ehi was scrolling through her social media page, all alone in the house, temptation came knocking. Someone had sent her a friend request, and when Ehi checked who it was, she saw that it was Leo, an old neighbor who relocated abroad when they were still young. Please like and subscribe for more interesting stories like this. Ehi accepted Leo's friend request and they started chatting almost immediately. She went through his profile and Ehi's breath was taken away by what she saw. Leo had grown into the man that she had always dreamt of ending up with. He was one of the most handsome men that she had ever seen. Even better was the fact that he had become very successful. Where Leo stood, Odia would never dream of getting there. And he was already enticed by what she saw on Leo's profile even before they started chatting, and that made her give him all her attention. While Odia was at work, and he spent the entire day chatting with Leo. When he requested for her phone number to give her a call, and he didn't hesitate. The first time he called her and she heard his rich, thick voice, and he almost melted. If he could sound like this, she would only wonder what it would feel like being in his arms. From chatting, they migrated to calls. Leo would call Ehi for hours during the day and they would talk and laugh non-stop. He knew that Ehi was married, but he didn't seem to mind. Ehi, on her part, gave Leo all her time and attention. For weeks, they built a connection without seeing each other physically. Every single day, Ehi looked forward to speaking to Leo, and because he knew when Odia returned from work, he wouldn't call at night. Even while lying in bed with her husband, thought of Leo kept filling Ehi's mind. She knew that it was wrong, but she couldn't bring herself to stop. Ehi told herself that she was only finding happiness for herself. As long as they were only talking over the phone, she wasn't committing any adultery, right? And more importantly, she wasn't hurting Odia by letting him know that someone else had taken her attention. Not that Odia ever had it in the first place anyway. After a few weeks of talking, Leo eventually revealed to Ehi that he was back in Nigeria. Ehi was shocked. She had no idea. But Leo told her that he simply didn't tell her immediately because he wanted to settle in first. He went ahead to tell Ehi that he had been setting up his business here in Nigeria and he had intentions to stay back. Then, Leo invited Ehi out for drinks. As she searched for the best dress that she had, a voice in Ehi's head kept telling her that she was walking herself into an open temptation. But Ehi dismissed the voice. She told herself that it was just drinks with an old friend and nothing more. First, she had convinced herself that since they weren't seeing each other physically, it wasn't that bad. And now that he had migrated to physical, Ehi was trying to convince herself that it was just a harmless hangout. She ended up honoring the invitation. When Ehi saw Leo for the first time in years, she realized that his pictures didn't do justice to him. Leo was very handsome, and because he worked out often, his body was like that of an athlete. Almost immediately, Ehi wished that it was Leo she was married to and not the other way around. After that day, Leo took Ehi out again. They drove around the beautiful city, talking and laughing. And then another date. And before Ehi knew it, she was always going out with Leo. His business setup was successful and Leo had everything a woman could ever desire. He even had the financial ability to take her abroad on holidays. He was already head over heels in love with Leo, and soon, Odia began to notice the changes in her. She became colder and more hostile towards him. But typical Odia, in trying not to upset Ehi, didn't ask her any questions. Then, one day, while Ehi was spending time with Leo, he professed his love to her. Leo told Ehi that he had fallen in love with her and would have loved to spend the rest of his life with her if she wasn't married. That night, while Odia snored, Ehi wept regretfully. Why didn't she wait for Leo? Why did she settle for a man like Odia? The answers were right in front of Ehi. She had been frustrated, desperate, and lonely, but now she hated herself for it. She wished that she had waited a little longer, or better still, Leo had reached out way before now. Leo was perfect for Ehi, and she was happier with him. He already gave her the liberty of a choice. and it only took Ehi a few days to come up with her decision. Odia's heart shattered completely when he told him that she wanted a divorce. Ah! She had now seen a man that she loved, and it would be unfair to both of them if she remained married to him. Odia fell on his knees and, with tears in his eyes, begged Ehi to not leave him. He would rather try harder to make her happy. And even if he knew that she cheated on him, he already forgave her and would never remember it. But should Ehi stay with Odia out of pity when she had finally found love? Odia went to Ehi's parents and sisters, recruiting them to help him beg Ehi to stay with him. He talked to friends and his family members, and everyone pleaded deeply with Ehi. But Ehi's mind was made up, and Leo was ready to marry her right away. When all attempts to make her stay fell through, Odia had to painfully grant Ehi her request and divorced her. Free to do as she pleased now, Ehi went to Leo, and Leo, on his part, stood by his words and married Ehi. Their wedding was the talk of the town. It was nothing compared to what her sisters had. And finally, Ehi was happy because she had gotten what she always wanted. Like, subscribe, and drop a comment for more stories. Their honeymoon was bliss, and Leo treated Ehi nicely. But 2 years down the line, things took a turn for the worse for Leo. His company hit a major setback, and everything that Leo struggled to build crashed to the ground. In the blink of an eye, he went from being wealthy to less than average. Things became tough for him and Ehi. Not that Ehi couldn't manage their new financial status, but Leo became something else. The big loss brought out the monster in him. He began to demand children from Ehi. Why hasn't she gotten pregnant yet, eh? They had been married for 2 years now, and yet she hasn't given him a single child. And he began to run helter-skelter, simply because she wanted to please Leo and make him happy. But none of it worked, especially as Leo completely distanced himself from her intimately. Leo didn't want anything to do with Ehi. It was as though her body now irritated him. At every slight chance, he would raise his voice at her and call her names. He would say that Ehi was the reason for his misfortune. If he hadn't married her, this wouldn't have happened to him. But still, Ehi tried harder. She collected money from her parents to cook, cleaned, washed Leo's clothes, and even bought gifts for him. But the harder she tried, the angrier Leo became. Then it became worse when he noticed that he was cheating on her with younger women in their 20s. The same Leo who didn't have money would stay away for days, and he would find him in hotels and restaurants with different women. Hmm. If she tried to confront him, he would tell her how much he regretted marrying her. It became pure torture for Ehi as Leo was getting worse. The love she thought they shared disappeared from her very eyes. The laughter that once rang between them had become a silent battle of hurtful words. Nothing was the same anymore. And even the attraction Ehi thought that she had for Leo was nowhere to be found. She realized that attraction could never cover up for cruelty. Frustrated and fed up, Ehi went to her parents and cried bitterly. She didn't know what else to do, as she had run out of all options. With Leo, she was never trying hard enough. It was then that her parents told her about Odia. His years of hard work had suddenly paid off, and Odia had become the richest man in the area. And he was stunned when she got to know that the new company that was recently opened belonged to Odia. To confirm for herself, he went on social media and found Odia's profile. For days, she stalked him and viewed everything he posted. He had become the man that she never thought he would be. And he even saw that Odia had traveled to several countries and he now partnered with some white men, making him millions of dollars. It didn't end there. Odia began to lay down investments and bought properties worth millions of naira. That way, no matter what happens, he would never have to go back to square zero. But he wasn't surprised when she heard all that. The truth was that Odia had always been hardworking and smart. She just never acknowledged it. So, while Leo would leave her all alone in their home to frolic with other women, Ehi would stay glued to her phone and stare at Odia's pictures. Memories of how well he treated her, even when he didn't have much, came calling. She could only imagine how Odia would treat her now that he could offer to give her the world. Then, Ehi was a queen in Odia's palace. How could she have forgotten how he never raised his voice at her or pressured her into anything? Of course, with Odia, she never had to do half of what she was doing now just to make Leo happy. Soon enough, he began to harbor the thought of going back to Odia. He always loved her. For years, he chased her, but she never accepted him. Yet, he waited until she was ready to marry him. For all he knew, that kind of man would never fall out of love for her. She also remembered that Edia told her that even if she cheated on him, he would forgive her. So that meant that he wouldn't mind that she married Liu, right? He summoned courage and went to Odia's mansion. She met with his security, who let her in after consulting with Odia. That gave Ehi some hope. When she got into Odia's beautiful living room, she fell on her knees and begged him to take her back. Ehi told Odia that she had now realized her mistake and she was ready to love him in return. After she had spent some minutes begging with tears and on her knees, a woman came downstairs. At first, he thought that she was simply an extended family member, even though she was heavily pregnant. But guess what? Odia told her that she was his wife. He had remarried about a year ago. He was stupefied. If she had known that he was married now, she wouldn't have come all the way to embarrass herself. But Odia told her that he deliberately kept his personal life off social media. Shamefully and with deep regret, he left and went back to Leo's house. But she was met with hostility. Leo stood by the door and told her that he knew that she went to plead with Odia to take her back, and as such, he didn't want anything to do with her any longer. He tried to beg, but Leo slammed the door in her face. He was now back to being single, dejected, and lonely. She had learned her lessons, but at her age, would she still get a better chance at love or marriage? For more interesting and educating stories, make sure you like and subscribe.